Welcome back to Life North of the 54th. I'm Garrett Brown, and it's a little different today because Preston is on a vacation in Europe, gallivanting across the countryside. So he won't be joining us today, but we have today with us Stephen Makus. Steve, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, as was said, my name is Stephen, 31 years old, and here's definitely one of my longest standing and oldest and one of my closest friends. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Stephen. How have you been? It's been a while since we got to sit and chat. I was hoping to catch up with you when I was in Alberta in the summer, but our schedules didn't line up very well.
No, there lots of problems with work. I think the last time, face to face, would have been Preston's wedding.
Yeah, I think so. So in 2019.
Which, I mean, wasn't all that long ago, I guess. But.
No, in part because I feel time passes. It feels like time is passing quickly and not so quickly all at the same time. It's, complex flow of time.
I mean, the older you get, the faster it passes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but it's great to talk to you.
You as well.
So thanks for joining me on this Life North of the 54th. I know you have spent a lot of time in the Peace Country.
Still am.
Yes. Still do spend a lot of time in the Peace Country.
Yeah. I'm up here for work a lot.
So do you want to tell me, Stephen, as some of what your earliest memories of the Peace Country are? Sort of like your first experiences with the Peace Country?
Yeah, so I was born in Edmonton, and my family, we lived there for, I want to say I was about 6 years old. And then my dad got a job up in Grand Prairie, and good government job. And so we relocated. And then, I spent the rest of my childhood or youth, as you would say, just growing up there. And then a few years later, moved back to Edmonton. But I still try to come back every now and again. But yeah, earliest memory, definitely the move up, I would say.
Yeah.
Big change at that age. So.
Yeah. Do you remember the drive up?
I do remember the drive up. Yes, I do. It was, when you're that young and you haven't really even gone for big trips where, especially with a big scenery change, it was like the first big long road trip for me when I was really young, and it was going to a place I'd only known the city at that point.
Yeah.
So anything wasn't the city was strange and new and fascinating.
Where did you move to first when you got to the Peace Country? Do you remember where your family first settled?
We first moved to an apartment in Grand Prairie for I think a year or two. Wasn't very long either way.
Yeah.
Moved away from there to more to the countryside.
Yeah. I remember the first time I met you, that I really remember meeting you as you lived out in La Glace. And I think we went to visit your family. I think. Maybe I'm misremembering with a different family. There was a different family, the Fisher family, who also lived in La Glace, I believe.
They weren't right in it, but they were close. They were, I think, only a 10-minute drive. So they were not far.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, because we became friends with your family before we moved out to La Glace.
Oh, okay.
And then did the ward swap once we moved out there.
That's right. But when you were out in La Glace, we were on the same baseball team. Is that right? Or we were opposite baseball teams?
No, you played against us.
Oh, right.
You played against us. But yeah, so I remember I was playing on the baseball team that we had. It was not much of a team, but it was a team, I guess. And I remember I had not seen you, probably about 3 years. And then I remember your team coming up and just completely mopping the floor. Wasn't Travis on that team too?
Yeah, I think Travis and Preston were both on the team.
Yeah, because I just remember you guys. I remember you guys hitting just basically just home runs at that age.
It was a slow pitch, right? It was underhand pitch only.
Yeah,
and we practiced pretty intensely. I remember we had a few kids from I think my junior high school, right from Harry Balfour, who were on the team, and I remember them practicing. Some of them were practicing to try and be fastball pitchers. That's what they wanted to do, is they wanted to play fastball.
Okay.
So there were a few times where we were playing a little bit of overhand pitching. So I guess we trained hard.
I just remember because it was I think it was the first team of the season too, and you guys showed up. Your team showed up. You had team uniforms, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, "We're done. these guys mean business."
Oh man! So I played back catcher when we did that. When we played,
mm-hmm.
And I remember in that game, I had a hard time with their like equipment because I don't know, I didn't really play baseball that much, but
Yeah,
I was the back catcher during that game, and I had this face guard right with the like a hockey mask sort of thing with the wire mesh,
yeah,
and I had a hard time seeing the ball
yeah.
as it was coming in, and it was slow pitch, so it wasn't like it was super dangerous. So I convinced the umpire that I didn't need the mask, and I took it off. And the very next pitch bounced off of a rock and hit me in the face. And it's just like, okay, I guess.
I do remember that actually.
Uh, okay, yeah, I guess that's right. That was the only game we played.
Fun fact about that game: that was the last year I ever played baseball.
Yeah, same here. It was actually the only game I ever played, like the only official game, because after that game we played, before the next game, our coach's house unfortunately burned down.
Oh no!
And so he was not in a position to coach us anymore, and we stopped playing baseball. So in terms of official games, I'm at a 100% win streak.
And I'm at about 100% loss. So
Oh no, Stephen. It's all my fault.
I was never really a baseball kid anyway.
Yeah, did you have different hobbies aside from good old-fashioned baseball?
In the glass, yeah, I was well because like growing up we didn't have a lot of money, right? So
Yeah.
you have outside that's your entertainment. So like I was big on frisbee a lot when I was a kid. A lot of riding bikes, taking jump.
Oh yeah.
But street hockey was the big one for
Nice.
me. Just 'cause we would always play with our neighbors. It was me and my brother, and then the two brothers over there. Just
Right.
in the summer, play street hockey almost every day.
Was there a little elementary or junior high school in the La Glace area, or where did you go?
Yeah, there's an elementary there. I think it was K-8, I believe, actually.
Oh wow, okay.
Small, tiny school.
Yeah.
Still there.
Yeah. And then your family moved back to Grand Prairie in town, and we ended up at the same high school time.
Yeah, so funny story about how that happened. So my dad worked in town, and the year before, my parents had just bought like a brand new minivan or something. And it was really nice, stuff like that. And then the one day when my dad was driving to work, he hit a deer and completely totaled it.
Oh no.
Luckily, insurance was going to cover the write off and reimburse and whatever. But the option then to my dad was because like he wasn't the biggest on living in the country. Like he liked hunting and stuff like that, but he's more of a city guy.
Yeah.
So my mom gave him the option. It's like, okay, we can get a new car or we can get a new house, and then so my dad hitting a deer is how we moved back into town.
Oh man.
Yeah, and then that was good. Yeah, like being able to, I guess, reunite with an old friend again.
Yeah.
Cruise through high school, and yeah, a lot of good memories there.
Yeah, I remember going over to your place a lot. I think out of all the friends from high school, well, to be honest, out of all of the friends from high school, you're the only person that I've talked to.
Yeah.
Who also who I'm not family with and who I went to high school with. So
From high school, it's like, I mean, we don't necessarily talk constantly.
Yeah.
But we don't miss a beat. So it's you, Preston, and if you remember Steph Boyd.
I remember the boys, but no, I don't think I could picture their face.
She was in track, so that's how we became friends.
Okay.
And still friends to this day.
Nice. Yeah, I remember going to your guys' place a lot.
We went to your place a lot too, so
Yeah, that's true.
it was either one or the other. One weekend is our place, and the next weekend is your place over the summer.
I definitely recall towards the end of my time in high school, I was a little bit fed up with driving to school. So I wanted to ride a bike, which is a little ambitious since like my childhood home was like 10 kilometers out of town. So it was just like country roads the whole way to school until like, well, I guess, and then I had to go basically halfway through town to get there. But I would more or less pass close to your house on the way.
There was definitely, because I remember when you started doing that, you and Preston were like, we're going to do this. And I definitely remember, yeah, you came by my house. I think it was like 2 or 3 times that you went by, and I was like, I'm going to bike to school too.
Yep.
I remember meeting you on the trail, and just the rest of that like nice weather of that school year is just I'd bike every day.
Yeah. I remember breaking my bike on one trip. I don't know if you also damaged yours or not. I was trying to do something ridiculous. Like I went down a hill across Bear Creek on 84th.
Was that where you just folded your entire rim in half?
Yeah, yes, yeah. So I was going down, I think it was along 84th, is that right?
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Just collapsed.
Yes, I was going down the hill on 84th and I crossed over the bridge to the Muskogee Trail and I turned hard, really hard, and I like slammed on my brakes and I was going to like do something cool, right? And skid around the corner or something. But my bike tire, like my entire bike wheel just folded completely in half. Yeah, that was not great. So I basically flipped my bike on its side and jumped on the wheel until I could get it to rotate around in a circle again.
I just need to make it to school.
Yeah, basically, it's like, oh, I got to get to school, I got to get to class. Yeah, I talked with the shop teacher. There was a time was Mr. Darienko, or Mr. D, and he helped me bend it into a little bit better shape so that I could get home too. But yeah, I definitely had to replace that afterwards, which wasn't truly that awful because we had a pile of like 100 junk bikes in on our acreage, so I just had to find a new piece to put on.
Yeah, just build some bikes. I remember doing that.
Yeah, people would donate bikes to us, and we would just throw them in a huge stack. Eventually, we took the stack. I was helping my dad clean out our acreage, and we basically looking up all the scrap metal. We're going to take scrap metal to the scrap metal yard. We put a whole bunch of scrap metal on the flat deck, and then my dad just took a tractor or the Bobcat with a forklift, and he just stabbed the middle of this stack of like 100 bicycles and just put it on the trailer. And I think I have a picture of it. If I do have a picture of it, I'll put it in the show notes and on the website so people can have a look at it.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be a great picture.
Yeah, it looks ridiculous. I also wanted to talk to you about computers, Stephen. When we were in high school, we'd go over to your place and we'd play video games and talk about computer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you were the one who introduced me to the idea of overclocking, and you explained how to overclock your CPU and sort of even, I think, were you overclocking your RAM too sometimes?
I've always kind of strayed away from overclocking RAM just for the fact that, at least in the older systems, it was more prone to error, I would say.
Yeah, and crashing.
Yeah, a lot more crashing. Whereas like CPUs, it's easy. Okay, maybe you don't have like it's basically you play a game, you find a good multiplier, good frequency, and a good voltage, and then just go from there.
Yeah.
Whatever's stable. But RAM is really tricky. I guess it's easier nowadays.
Yeah. I've never really had a computer that I was able to overclock before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I typically like Apple computers, and I mean, it's like the antithesis of overclocking is getting a Mac. But I do have a Raspberry Pi, and I got a Raspberry Pi that it was a 3B plus.
Okay.
And it was fine, and it was a little slow, but I was like, yeah, it's a Raspberry Pi, so I expect it to be a little slow. And then for Christmas, I got a Raspberry Pi 4.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be like much faster, right? And I got it, and it felt slower than my Raspberry Pi 3. And so I was like, okay, something feels wrong here. So I looked into it, and for some reason, the default settings of my Raspberry Pi 4 had it a fixed clock speed of like 800 megahertz. So it was even slower than the fixed clock speed of my Raspberry Pi 3. And I was like, I'm going to try it. And then so I overclocked it to like 1.5 or 2 gigahertz. It was like 2 or 3 times as fast. And it was stable and great. And it's like, okay, this is great. Now I have what I feel like is a snappy and fast Raspberry Pi.
I've actually wanted to get into, like, I've kind of been out of the computer game for a while now.
Yeah.
Like, as far as, I guess, the expertise that I was trying to have, like, as far as, like, I guess I'm a hardware guy.
Yep.
But I always had trouble with the hardware software meshing.
Yeah.
The reason why I like hardware is because it's like a machine, right? It's just like, if this thing doesn't work, if you fix it, everything else should work.
Right.
It's not like that with computers, code optimization and this, that. But Raspberry Pis, I kind of want to delve into a little bit.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Arduino, because it seems a little more hands-on. Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well for Arduinos. I have not done anything with Arduinos, but I have seen them, and I have seen them used. The physics department here at the University of Toronto does use Arduinos for some things. Mm-hmm. And my advisor, my PhD advisor, he's teaching a course in scientific computing. It was an undergraduate course. And he didn't want to have some of like course requirements where you had to have some specific computer or something or to be able to do it. So basically the scientific computing was, he bought all of the students Arduinos and they did their scientific computing on Arduinos. So it was just basically like equal for everybody. They all had the same computer.
Yeah.
And the budget for the course, because you could buy 50 or 100 Arduinos for a course and give everybody their own computer. They're pretty cool things. Yeah.
But the thing that interests me about it is so like Raspberry Pi is kind of fixed more to proprietary boards, right? Like,
yes, I think so.
like a lab or a group will make up a board and they'll sell the board off as their configuration or the hats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas Arduino, it's just kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the architecture of how Arduino is, right? You're more open to, I guess, interpretation.
Okay.
Like for example, you can have your Arduino component with the advent of being able to get custom printed PCBs.
Yeah.
With the ability to put SMD components on it.
Okay.
Now you can just take the architecture of Arduino and design your own PCBs. So it's still an Arduino, but the design that you have made is completely custom and unique to whatever you want to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
A lot more solder.
Yeah, I think that's another thing about Arduino. It's a lot more soldering.
A lot more.
I don't recall, but I'm not sure that like the motherboard of an Arduino has pins in the same way that a Raspberry Pi does, right?
No.
Raspberry Pi has the pin interface, so you can easily hook new components onto it and stuff like that for rapid testing or small prototyping.
Yeah, so Arduino is definitely more prototype for sure. But it's also the fact that you can do pin setups, and I've seen modules that people have made where it'll have like say 2 or 3 separate boards.
Yeah.
But they'll kind of pack them together with little riser mounts and then just use ribbon cable to tie them all together.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Or stack them like the hats on Raspberry Pi. I've seen that too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm interested in high performance computing as well, which typically means supercomputer stuff. But a supercomputer is essentially just a whole bunch of computers networked together.
Yeah.
The internet on one level or another is a supercomputer.
Yeah, cloud computing.
Yeah. But one of the things that I would be interested in doing, if I had the opportunity to, is to design or teach a course where we take like 4 or 5 or 8 Raspberry Pis, and we basically start from Raspberry Pis and connect them together into like a cluster configuration and then run code on a distributed node sort of thing. To sort of like the practice of, hey, let's start with the idea of writing code for one CPU core, which is typically how things are done, then writing code for multiple CPU cores, which you can do on most modern CPUs. They have multiple cores per CPU. And then writing code to run on multiple CPUs on multiple computers at the same time. And I think that a course like that would be really insightful. And doing it on a small scale Raspberry Pis where you spend like $200 to get 4 Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
And then like another $200 to get all of the other hardware and stuff that you want to put it together in a nice little box, make it look good. I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The coding would definitely be the challenge of it, though, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And also getting the software installed correctly. But I think that's all part of the appeal to it. Yeah. Seeing how the software and hardware interact together.
Well, and then plus you have the factor of what is your software being tailored for? Like, what is the function of the cluster? Like, what is is it going to be crunching numbers? Is it going to be doing big calculations? Is it going to do probabilities? Like, what are you doing with it? Are you rendering? Like, there's a whole pile of things you can do.
Right. Yeah, I think for a Raspberry Pi, since their GPUs are pretty weak sauce, be mostly CPU. But for me, scientific computing, because that's mostly what I spend my time thinking about and doing. So running simulations and solving equations to get scientific answers. That's the sort of approach, because on one level, in order to scale large, like to really large systems, you have to have a fundamental understanding of how the software and the hardware interact together.
Yeah.
And what you're doing to make it more efficient or to make it doable. And so I think doing a course where you like put the hardware together and you get the software working on it would be instructive.
Yeah. So I've actually been kind of like COVID kind of, not being employed, kind of on a tangent here.
Yeah.
Not being employed for that period of time kind of dampened my interest in hobbies quite significantly.
Yeah.
And only within the last year, I've been kind of picking them up again, but kind of like retro computing, because that's what I started in. I've taken a lot of interest in. And if there's one thing I've noticed between, say, old computer systems, whether it be software, games, is due to the fact that they had more limited hardware.
Yeah.
The software had to be miles better and the code had to be way more optimized, where now code optimization isn't so much a thing anymore, because it's just, well, if we don't have enough code optimization, we'll just increase the computing power and we don't have to worry about it.
Yep. I've noticed that too.
And one of my favorite examples of code optimization, funny enough, are you aware of the fast inverse square root?
I have heard of the algorithm, but I'm not, yeah, intimately familiar with it.
So basically, what it was used in the Quake series to calculate and help render lighting and reflections,
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
but really, really complex ones for that time. So, but the problem was getting like I guess the geometry of it proper and getting it to render quickly and efficiently
Yep.
with the hardware at the time. And so they made up this equation, which is the fast inverse square root. And what it did is instead of giving a precise answer, it gave an approximate answer that was like, say, 98% accurate,
Yeah.
but it worked 5 times faster.
Right.
But it's kind of sad actually to see that as far as coding has gone, it's some places you still find it. Indie games actually is a big one
Yep.
where you find more optimized code, I find.
Yeah. But I agree. Some of the people I've talked to here in Toronto who work in software, a lot of the times it seems that the priority is more of get it done than get it done well. And then on top of that, it makes optimization more difficult because you get a whole bunch of technical debt on terms of you have a whole bunch of code that works, but it's not working well. And then suddenly you start putting more and more stuff on it and it just bloats. And then trying to trim it down becomes even more difficult the longer you go without fixing it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I'll let you know later, but there's actually a channel you might be interested in regarding that.
Yeah, that would be great. I do actually spend most of my spare hobby time either listening to people talk about tech or watching videos about tech and science.
Yeah, this guy was a Microsoft engineer, and he's got his own channel now.
Nice.
He's just does it from his garage, but he's a Microsoft engineer, and he was the guy who invented Task Manager.
Oh,
And he's a super nerd, but he's very, very big on code optimization. So that might be right in your wheelhouse.
yeah. And considering the person who, created Task Manager, that sounds like somebody who's very interested in optimization, just constantly going, why is my computer running so slowly? Who is taking up all of my RAM? Why is my CPU so high?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know. We can talk. I guess Steve, we can talk a lot more about tech, but this is
Yeah.
on one level or another show about life in the Peace Country. And while I do know that loads of computers are used in the Peace Country and some really interesting places, like in the oil and gas industry, just out in the middle of nowhere on some pump house or in some flow box.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
We can get back to it after.
but thanks. That's great. It's great to talk to you about tech.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Coming back a little bit, do you have any favorite spots in Grand Prairie or any places that you loved hanging out when you were a youth there?
Grand Prairie. Honestly, a lot of it was on the Bear Creek Trail. I spent a lot of time there
Yeah.
when I lived in the city, mostly because of my bike.
Mm-hmm.
But the same thing out in the Glass. There's a lot of it. We had like bike spots, right? So the Glass, where it is, every cardinal direction out of that town is either highway or gravel road going through farms. So yeah, we just bikes, take them out of the city.
Yeah.
Let's go find some cool spots. I don't know if I really had like a really favorite hangout spot. I don't know. I had a lot, but not one that stuck out in particular, I would say.
Yeah. I do really enjoy the Muskogee Park trails.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice. Yeah. I really miss it being in Toronto. I feel like you can get some similar stuff in Edmonton, but not quite the same in Toronto. Maybe it's because I live so close, so downtown,
Right.
where it's just skyscrapers everywhere. There are trails like that, but they're not like the Muskogee one where they're all paved. Sometimes here it's just packed gravel or like packed dirt,
Oh yeah.
which isn't the same for biking or going around on small wheels like a scooter or skateboard.
No.
What kind of, did you have any jobs? Did you work at all when you were in high school?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of off as it sounds, or maybe weird to some. I actually started working like as like an official job, not a paper route. I did paper route before, but I like an actual job was when I first had one, and I was working for a drywall company when I was 12 years old. Was all I was doing was hauling out scrap drywall, throwing it in the dumpster, sweeping floors, and I think I got paid like I don't know, $5 an hour or something like that, which at the time for a 12-year-old is a lot. You know.
Yeah.
go after school, go basically carry out garbage for 3, 4 hours and 20 bucks.
Yeah. You were 12? I worked with you on that job too, right?
Yeah, so I remember because you asked me when we were in high school, so I'd already been working there for a while.
Oh.
I'd already been working with Todd for like 3 seasons by that point.
Oh wow. Yeah, I also had that like a drywalling job in high school, and it was a great learning experience. I think yeah, our boss was great and kind
Yeah.
and very helpful and would take time to teach us life lessons, but also got to learn a little bit about how drywall works and why homeowners are so frustrated when they have to do their own drywall.
But on the upside, anytime you need to fix drywall, it's easy.
Yeah, it's much better. I actually, when we first moved to Toronto, the basement we moved into, the homeowner was just finishing up touch up renovations,
Mhm.
and we were staying in an Airbnb, and we needed to move in as soon as possible, and they were trying to finish up the renovation so that we could move in. And I was like, "Hey, I can do some drywall. I will come and do the drywall for free so that we can move in sooner." And they're like, "Oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that."
And then yeah, I would say through like I stopped working for a bit in high school, but that's a whole nother story as to why I stopped working. But main important part is that I did stop working for most of it. And then towards the end of it, I stayed in construction for a bit, doing odd jobs. I worked for a reno company that was all right, and then I got a job with a spray foam insulation company, which great concept. I love the idea that it was good for the environment as regards to how well it heats your homes. But man, is it really terrible for your health?
Yeah, did you find it negatively affecting your health when you were working for it?
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
Oh man.
Aside from the dust, but I mean, you wear dust masks all the time.
Yep.
It was more so the chemicals that are used to make it, right? Like you can only filter so much of it
Yep.
out of your breathing space.
Yep.
But when I left the job, I distinctly remember it was like a month or two later after I'd left, and I realized I had lost my sense of smell because it came back. I
Wow. That's kind of scary.
was like, oh, I can smell stuff. What the heck?
And taste? I guess did your taste change too?
That weirdly enough, my taste did not change.
Oh,
Just smell.
wow.
So, yeah. And then then I got a job with Planet In,
Yeah.
and then I've kind of been in the oil and gas sector, not necessarily in the field. A lot of it was spent in the shop, but I've stayed in that sector ever since then.
Yeah, so that was sort of a transition for you from high school to adult world, like adulting. Was this also sort of like transition from construction to oil and gas?
Yeah, I don't know if a transition to adulting
Yeah.
because
I mean,
because for me personally, it really took a long time to really kind of, I guess, grasp what that meant
yeah, for sure.
and like kind of figure that out for myself. Like I would easily into my late 20s for sure.
I agree with you, Stephen. I moved to Fort St. John basically after finishing high school and worked in a tire shop for a year. And then I served a mission for the church in England for 2 years and then got back to the Peace Country and then went down to Utah to go to school. And I did my bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
But it really wasn't until towards the end of my bachelor degree or really when I moved to Toronto that I began to understand the adulting experience.
Yeah.
And like what it means to be an adult. And like, by then you're like in your late 20s, basically starting to be 30.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. And even though I had like distinct transitions from like moving cities and countries, it was still a number of years before I really realized what it meant to be adulting.
Yeah, I definitely thought like in my head at the time, being young and naive, that moving to a different city would make me more of an adult.
Yep.
And that kind of motivated me to move to Edmonton all those years ago.
Yeah.
But it didn't. I would say the final hurdle really was through long periods of self-reflection during my time off in COVID. I think that was the final one where it's like I kind of came into my own and actually felt like I was an adult for the first time.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Steve, how have your feelings for the Peace Country evolved over the years then? I mean, I am hoping for both of us that we have at least twice as long to spend together as friends, but in your brief years now and I guess in your reflection, how have things changed in your view of the Peace Country?
Yeah. So like when I moved away, I don't know. There was a little bit of bitterness and disdain. That like another factor of motivating me for moving away. I was like, I just needed a change of scenery. It was feeling stale,
Yeah,
and there's actually like a few years after I moved where I didn't come back up here. Like I didn't want to for a very long time, and then I just started making more concerted effort to travel up to visit family and friends a little bit more often.
for sure.
So there was definitely a period where I was like, yeah, I don't want to go back there. I don't like that place. But again, as I've gotten older and more of an adult and more mature, I would say, I definitely forgot how great it is actually. So and how much I like it here.
Yeah. I know Edmonton shares a lot in terms of seasonal change, but every summer I miss the summers of the Peace Country.
Yeah.
They are just incredible with the really long days and essentially the mild temperatures. I know occasionally it gets warm, but it's not often humid. It's not often hot, but you can just enjoy the day basically all day.
Yeah. Well, and especially too, like now I'm definitely kind of done with the city, and I'm actually looking to move back next year.
Mm.
So somewhere in Grand Prairie there, rent a place. The ideal goal would be to get an acreage. So I'm kind of, I don't know, just want to kind of make full circle, I guess. Come back home
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, a couple of years ago when we went back to Grand Prairie in the Peace Country to visit, I remember driving up basically out of the Smoky River Valley over like past Bezanson and heading back, and it's just sort of difficult to disentangle and difficult to fully explain. But like the feeling of having been away for a while, for many years, and then going back, it's sort of, it feels like home because, I grew up there and it feels nostalgic and memorable. And it's really difficult for me to disentangle those like really positive and like happy feelings of the Peace Country
Hmm.
from the nostalgia of my childhood with the idea that it's also actually really beautiful up there in the summertime
Yeah.
and just the stunning, like shallow rolling hills with the open fields and the trees and the hills. And if you're really lucky, you can see the glints of the mountains in the far distance.
Yeah.
There's like, yeah, there's something quite stunning about it. But I totally agree with the city life and the country life. I think having experienced a pandemic in such a big city, it's very motivating for me to not live in the city my whole life.
Yeah. 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 Well, if I do move next year, it'll be 13 years I've lived in Edmonton. So I've actually by next year I'll have lived in Edmonton longer my entire life than I ever have in Grand Prairie.
Wow.
But that being said, I'm kind of done with city life.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting old. Maybe that's part of it. I'm just turning into an old man prematurely, and it's like I just want to sit on my porch in the country,
Yeah.
watch the sunrise.
Yeah.
But I definitely share the sentiment of coming back up and the nostalgia, and for a first little bit, it's like you said, the tangling of the nostalgia and your childhood and the area, and it's like no, I think just the area is just like a lot nicer, and I think you would have to spend a lot of time there to truly appreciate it. It does have it like winters are cold,
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
cold, and a lot of
Absolutely.
snow.
Yeah. And they last a long time. It's for me, it would be practically unfeasible for me to move back to the Peace Country, like, north of Edmonton all the way to Grand Prairie,
Hmm.
mostly because it would be such a shock and difficulty for my wife. Like just being in the cold for so long would be hard.
Yeah,
Edmonton seems reasonable, but I think farther than that would be difficult.
it definitely has its cold days in Edmonton.
It does, yeah.
Last couple of years, we've had some really cold winters.
Yeah. So I have another philosophical question for you, Stephen.
Mm, just my jam.
How do you feel that living in the Peace Country has influenced your outlook on life?
Hmm.
That sort of question is sort of comparing, growing up in the Peace Country compared to a hypothetical had you not grown up in the Peace Country. How do you think you view the world differently because of it?
I think growing up in the Peace Country was only half of it. I think I needed to have that contrasting environment to not only just appreciate the area and appreciate the growing up and the great times that I had there, but just as an outlook on life in general. For example, life doesn't need to go fast. In the city, it always goes fast, but it doesn't need to be. There's a lot of inherently good beauty in nature,
Yeah, for sure.
right? So, and once I got into that, it's like you start to see that same natural beauty wherever you go, rather than it just being like a local place, like, oh, this is the only beautiful place in the world kind of thing. It's like now I see it as like, I like the Peace Country because it's unique in itself. Very that Grand Prairie area is very it's kind of tucked in this little valley.
Yeah.
It's close to the mountain range, but it's also a plain. It's weird, but then I start seeing that same kind of uniqueness in other places as well.
Yeah. That's really insightful.
I started to see, I guess, in a way, I started to see the world in a way with a wider lens. I would say, especially in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would have gained that perspective had I not seen the other side of it, the side I'm not so keen on.
Yeah, yeah. On one level, it's difficult to appreciate the beauty of it if you are always surrounded by the beauty and never see anything else.
Yeah. And even Edmonton. Edmonton's beautiful in its own right, actually. I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Yeah, this past summer there, it was incredible. Yeah.
it is an absolutely beautiful city. And, but again, it's a place that has its own merits and has its own natural beauty.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just biased. Maybe I'm just biased to my home soil.
Yeah, that's true. I suspect that the density of people does make a difference on one level. As another example, this past summer when we were in Alberta, we went to Banff. And Banff was a gorgeous national park. But when we went, it was a Saturday and it was packed with so many people. Like, there was just people everywhere. And it was great to enjoy it, but it was also difficult to enjoy it because everyone was enjoying it at the same time.
Right.
Then a few days later, we went down to Waterton National Park, and we went on a Tuesday, and it was so much emptier, and just it was easier to appreciate the beauty of it without being distracted by the people. And on one level, people would say that Banff is more beautiful because it certainly has features that are unique and stunning. But on another level, Waterton was so peaceful to be there.
Yeah.
And to sort of spend time just what felt like more my own pace instead of the pace of everyone else trying to see everything else at the same time.
Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that wholly. I think there's like when it comes to especially stuff like that, I think there's a time and place for a lot of people.
For sure.
And then there's a time and place for not a lot of people. And actually, funny enough, I'm actually in Dawson Creek right now. I'm not even in Alberta.
Nice.
I mean, it's kind of just like, it's still technically the Peace Country, actually.
It is. In some ways, I feel like going a little bit farther north out of Grand Prairie is more deeply the Peace Country than Grand Prairie itself. Grand Prairie gets a lot of stuff from Edmonton in terms of feel and flow to it.
Yeah.
But when you go out of the the biggest city in the Peace Country to some of the smaller ones, and more closely towards the Peace River itself, you get more of the Peace Country feel.
Yeah, once you get closer to like the Saddle Hills and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you have some other thoughts you want to share, Stephen, or any questions for me?
I mean, obviously, at any time, it's great to talk to you.
Thanks. Same, likewise.
That'll be a thing that always remains. But I think it's pretty neat that you're doing this show. I think it's great. I think I listened to like 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Before, so maybe I'm one of those 4. On a couple of those.
I know that there are really very few people who listen to this podcast, and for me personally, I tried really hard to get a show out every month.
Mm-hmm.
And this past summer, we took a bit of a break, so I think that's fine. So we're sort of aiming for 10 episodes a year.
Okay.
So this is, in one way or another, unofficially or officially, season 2.
Hey.
but one of the largest motivations about doing this podcast is taking time to talk with people, that I knew growing up, or that were part of my life growing up, or, that had similar experiences to me growing up. Because like you, during the pandemic, I was reflecting on sort of, the state of the world and my own personal feelings, and being in a big city and it just being so difficult, sort of feeling trapped and frustrated.
Right.
I kind of struggle to, stay connected with people generally. And so I thought if I had something where I was like, even though only, 4 or 5 people listen to the show, I do want to try and have a consistent show for myself as something that, like, I do want to consistently do this. And so that gives me like motivation and push to reach out to people and to talk to people and to talk about their life, catch up with them,
Yeah.
see how they're doing.
I mean, it's good. I think it's really good, and I think like specifically, I guess the topic you're going after, right? Not a lot of people that at the very base level, you're kind of chronicling experiences in the area with the people you grew up with, and that at the very least is like, okay, well, there's some stories, right? Maybe it's not popular now, but maybe down the road it will be. But at the same time, I think it's kind of cool that you're getting out there to try to share these people's stories and experiences from an area that I would say, I mean, at least I hold dear to my heart. And I would assume you probably do as well.
Yeah, thanks.
And who knows? Maybe it'll take off. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
Sometimes you go,
yeah, sometimes it does.
Maybe no. Maybe your next episode or 2 episodes, 3 episodes down the road, you'll be all of a sudden, boom, hundreds of people listening.
Yeah,
there's snowballs from there. I think the big part is, at least for you specifically, if I were doing it, like as long as it's something like a little project that you're passionate about, right?
Yeah,
you're passionate about it and you have fun doing it. You have fun talking to people, get a little laugh, whatever. I think that's all that matters.
Yeah, I do also really enjoy the creative process of it. I enjoy the recording of it and talking with people. It's really great to catch up with people and hear their stories. Maybe part of it is the motivation that when I was younger, I didn't spend a lot of time talking with people, but I spent a lot of time listening to people talk about their stories.
Right.
Some of them were just, like hunting stories from the region, or people's experiences of the area, or a little bit of history of the area. But generally just people having conversations about this, that, or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I always thought that they were great and fascinating stories. So I think taking the time to, as you say, chronicle them, sort of capture them on some level so that others can enjoy the stories too.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that's important.
So then having 4 or 5 people a month listening to the stories is sort of like having a small group of friends get together and, have someone share their life story and everybody gets a chance to listen. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, just hang out, have a little chat and talk about stuff,
Oh. Well, thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah, man. Of course. I appreciate the invitation of being part of your show, being a guest on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming and for taking the time to catch up with me, have a chat.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Message me, call me, whatever.
Sure. Thanks. And you can message me anytime too.
If I don't get back to you, it's because I can't get back to you, not because I don't want to get back to you.
Yes. Yeah, that's how it is for me too. And Preston will get to listen to the show like every other listener and get it when it comes out.
How long has he gone for?
A few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been meaning to, I wouldn't say we talk regularly, but I do talk to Preston.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to hang out with him, but it's just I don't know, the last year and a bit have been kind of hectic for me. So between work and then other stuff, it's been hectic, and I feel bad because it's there's a lot of friends where I've kind of been yeah, we should hang out sometime, and it hasn't happened. In a lot of ways, I feel bad, especially for Preston, right?
Yeah.
But that's why you guys are such good friends, is because just pick up where we left off.
Yeah, it's great. I really appreciate that.
They say that is the test of a true friend. When you see your friend after many years, it's as if you never missed a day between.
I appreciate you being a friend like that for me, Stephen.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you being the same friend, Garrett. We have known each other for most of our lives, so there's that.
That's also true.
Since we were wee children.
Yep.
Now we're in our 30s. We're getting old.
Yeah.
Getting old. Well, I guess I'll end on saying, think this what you're doing here is pretty great, and I think that more people need to talk about their life stories and just life in general. I think people need to do that more and share, or either even listen. I think there's something for everybody out there. I think what you're doing is good.
Thank you.
And,
And thank you to those who do listen. If you want to email us feedback, ask us questions, or write in a story for us to share, you can email us at lifenorthofthe54th@gmail.com. We're really grateful for you to come on the show, Stephen.
mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm grateful to be here.
Thanks. I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, you as well.
See you around and talk to you again.
Yeah, for sure.
Bye.
Ciao.